The hypocrisy and the projection of these people is something to behold. What is the oxygen deprivation situation in the Oval Office? As I wrap this week, my first week back after being on a trip for a while, I wanted to thank Garrison Hayes and Boston Bryan, two exemplary individuals who stepped in and guest hosted on this channel while I was gone. If you haven't already, go support these two awesome individuals in independent media, Garrison Hayes and Boston Bryan, who hosts Blunt Politics, both on YouTube. Both do spectacular work that needs more eyeballs on what they do. Independent media, this is a rough and tumble. There's a lot of competition in this space, and I think that you should go check them out and support them by subscribing and checking out their work. Now, let's get to the topic at hand today. A wise man once said that it can only good happen.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. Apparently, though, that doesn't come into account when we're talking about incidences in the Oval Office itself. Yesterday, two men were rendered unconscious in the Oval Office, one being a Novo Nordisk or some pharmaceutical executive, and the other was Donald Trump himself. Donald Trump passed the fuck out in the Oval Office. But Sleepy Joe, right? Isn't that what they say? Sleepy Joe. Here is the moment. And the camera will be trained upon Dr. Oz for just a little bit. But then off to the left screen, when they go wide, you'll see Donald Trump seriously just passed out. Then we'll get to the unfortunate medical incident where the man lost consciousness while Donald Trump was absolutely empathy-free and unconcerned about his well-being. First, though, Donald Trump passed out.
In fact, we think these deals, and this part's very important, we believe these deals within 2 years, by the time the ink dries on these contracts that were signed earlier today, within 2 years, based on our health improvements, we will be budget neutral. These drugs will not cost us money. The American taxpayers will be getting their money back. That's how important it is for us to reduce the costs of healthcare in this country, especially when it's due to preventable problems like obesity. In addition, we have an update, Secretary Kennedy. We thought it was 125 million pounds. Mr. President, our estimate, based on the company numbers as well, is Americans will lose 135 million pounds by the midterms. But I don't measure it in pounds. I measure it in saved lives. People can sleep again because they can breathe as when they go to bed. Folks whose knees don't hurt. People who don't have heart attacks, renal failure, dementia, all the things we know are associated with obesity and much more.
The hypocrisy and the projection of these people is something to behold. Now, the comments that Dr. Oz made, I'm going to address them after, but I want to talk about the dangerous atmosphere that must be. What is the oxygen deprivation situation in the Oval Office? You got Dr. Oz talking about obesity being a leading cause of Alzheimer's, and then they cut to Donald Trump, our obese president, who might very well suffer from Alzheimer's, and we're putting two to two together, right? It wasn't the only, again, pass out situation in the Oval Office. In the middle of another executive's remarks, there was an incident where one of the executives, you stand for a while. They warn you about this. When I was in the Marine Corps, if you stand in formation for a long time, they tell you not to lock your legs back, to bend your legs, to get a little blood flow. Otherwise, you might pass out. This happens. You see it all the time. And I think this is what happened with this individual. The only problem is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he acted like he was going to get framed for murder. He ran out of the room. You'll see this on the clip. And Donald Trump, absolutely unconcerned.
And creating high-value jobs. But today, are you okay? Gordon, you okay? Yeah.
Press out. Press. We're going. Thank you, press. Cameras, we're done rolling. Cameras.
Look, I hope that guy's okay. I don't know. Inexplicably, It was like you needed the cartoon noise effect of people when they getting ready to run, like in a Scooby-Doo episode. Ruh-roh. He ran out of there like he was going to get accused of something. While Donald Trump did nothing. They caught this photo, this unbelievably, what a beautiful metaphor for what is literally and metaphorically happening in our country right now. There is medical attention being given to someone while Donald Trump looks off into the distance, completely unconcerned. That is a work of art, that photo right there. I mean, other than him just being normally a little bit sleepy, that is wild. Now, let's get back to Dr. Oz's statement there, which is in itself a ridiculous metaphor for something. Maybe it's the fact that they just don't understand math. Dr. Oz multiple times has repeated Donald Trump's claims that the prescription prices are going to be down not just 500 or 600%, but 11, 12, 1,300, 1,600%. Can I hear 1,800%? How about it do? Like an auctioneer. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he made this claim. In addition, he says, we have an update, Secretary Kennedy. We thought it was going to be 125 million pounds that Americans would lose by the midterms. Mr. President, our estimate, based on the company numbers as well, is Americans will lose 135 billion pounds by the midterms. The midterms, November 3rd, 2026. 135. Let's just do a little calculation here. So we've got 135 billion pounds divided by roughly 340 million people in the country. Listen, if you want to do your part, your patriotic duty, you're going to have to shed 391 and a third pounds by next year. You have less than a year, fewer than 365 days to get on the stick and lose 391 pounds. Oh, come on. Who are these people? Stop electing stupid people to high office. And Dr. Oz knows better. Dr. Oz is an actual heart surgeon, a wildly trained, presumably highly educated individual. You got Donald Trump passing out in between, calling Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. There are not this many photos of Joe Biden pass the fuck out at White House events in public. It just doesn't happen. It didn't happen. Yet he's still Sleepy Joe, apparently. But MAGA, they're not up in a twist about Donald Trump being asleep at every single event, standing up, practically falling asleep. It's the hypocrisy that gets you, right? Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. We can have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it. I could smell the onions and the mustard. That wasn't mustard gas. That was a Subway, what they call a sandwich. You have invariably heard about the DC sandwich guy, a gentleman named Sean Dunn, who was arrested, charged with a felony against a federal officer for throwing a sandwich at him. The grand jury decided, nope, this does not rise to the level of a felony. We will not indict. It forced Donald Trump and Jeanine Pirro to walk back their charge and charge him with a misdemeanor. They took it to trial. He did not plead guilty. They took it to trial where he was acquitted yesterday. Acquitted of a misdemeanor. No assault. The jury saw fit to say no. A grand jury, they said no. A regular jury, they said no. This should inform your behavior when you get called to serve on a jury and something like this comes up, whether that be grand jury or petite jury, or, just standard criminal or misdemeanor jury. There's been a lot of talk about the crime in DC. I portend and have put forward. We've done videos. I've walked the streets. I live in the city. There's no out of control crime. But the White House would want you to feel differently about that. You might remember a few months back when they put out this video of this urban assault raid and arrest on a dangerous criminal in the streets from his home in DC. It's like 26 seconds or so. Watch this video from the White House. that you just witnessed, the ominous dun dun, it's like the Sicario movie or something. I mean, they really paint a picture of them dealing with heavy crimes, like hardened criminals and terrorists. That guy in the video that you just watched was the aforementioned sandwich guy. That is the level of force they brought to bear against someone who chucked a sandwich. Maybe that's a crime. I have said that I believe that the only crime that I witnessed in the video that I'm going to play for you here, the only crime I witnessed is that people are referring to the thing he threw from Subway restaurant. Referring to that as a sandwich is really the only crime I see. Here's like 30 seconds from a local DC affiliate talking about this case.
A DC man caught on camera slapping a Customs and Border Protection agent right there with his Subway sandwich, then taking off. 37-year-old Sean Charles Dunn tried to sprint away. He was ultimately arrested and is now charged with felony assault on a law enforcement officer.
Again, acquitted. Not charged with felony, acquitted. But Janine Pirro, you might remember this, came out and celebrated the White House urban assault raid on that guy's apartment complex, poking fun and making jokes while, I guess, looking into the future at a conviction that never came. Here is our absolutely feckless U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, the city in which I live, Janine Pirro.
And the president's message to the criminals was, if you spit, we hit. Well, we didn't quite do that the other night when an individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there. Stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
He doesn't think it's funny today because he's been charged with a felony that never came. He doesn't think it's funny today because he's been charged with the misdemeanor that he was acquitted for. What's great about this is some of the testimony, the transcripts of the testimony were reported on, and it is remarkable how prosecutors came at this case. Here's a headline from WUSA, the local affiliate here in Washington, D.C. The headline, I could smell the onions and mustard. Federal agent testifies in D.C. sandwich guy trial. Sean Dunn's defense attorney argued the sandwich toss was protected speech, an exclamation point on his First Amendment protest of federal agents' presence that night. He did it. He threw the sandwich, the defense attorney told the jury. You are going to be asked whether what occurred that night was a federal crime. Video played at trial showed Dunn verbally confronting the group of federal agents for several minutes. Larimer, that's the individual, the agent, the armed agent of the state, the secret police, the steely-eyed urban assault raid warrior. This is what he had to say at trial. Larimer described it as a profanity-laced tirade. He testified that Dunn threw the sandwich so hard it exploded against his bulletproof vest. Quote, I could smell the onions and the mustard, Larimer said. Oh, he seems like a shell-shocked soldier coming back from World War I after having been in the gas-drenched trenches. I could smell the onions and the mustard. That wasn't mustard gas, Mr. World War II trench dweller. That was a Subway, what they call a sandwich. And then again, some jurors were seen holding back laughter as the video was replayed in court, though prosecutors stressed the matter is serious. I'm not going to get into too deeply. There's videos out there. I think the Legal Eagle has a video about jury nullification that you should watch, I think. If not, just search jury nullification and you'll be able to see what exactly it's about. But my charge to you, my ask of you is if you end up on a jury, grand jury especially, but if you end up on a jury and something like this comes up, It's your duty, it's your right, it's your absolute obligation to do what this jury did. I believe. I'm just telling you what I'm going to do if I end up on a jury. I did have jury duty a couple weeks ago, but didn't get called to a trial. It's on all of us to protect people who are stepping up and standing out in the crowd and doing their protest, exerting and exercising their First Amendment right under the Constitution. So I want to play for you a statement that was made by Sean Dunn. And in this statement, while you're watching it, I want you to remember the White House video. Dun, dun, whoosh, all of the insane drama that they brought to bear. The guy that they arrested in that video, this is him. This is the dangerous terrorist who assaulted a federal officer who could smell the mustard and onions. This is him.
I would like to thank family and friends and strangers for all of their support, whether it was emotional or spiritual or artistic or financial. And I am so happy that justice prevails in spite of everything happening.
That seems like a gentle, decent man that the federal government he lost his federal job, by the way. He worked at the DOJ. This seems like someone who needs to be lifted up. We need more Sean Dunns in the world and far fewer Jeanine Pirros and Donald Trump. We need far fewer ICE agents. We need far fewer masked armed agents of the state who are kidnapping people off the streets of many, many cities in the United States. They are detaining, they are arresting American citizens that they don't suspect are Americans because they're not quite the same shade as I am. They don't speak English the same way that I do, with as much proficiency or with a different kind of accent. So they're not American enough in the eyes of the masked goons who are too cowardly to even show their faces while executing their duty, following the orders of the fascist racist in the White House. Good for this jury. I guess that's ultimately what we have here. I don't recommend throwing sandwiches at people, but good on the jury. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it. Alexa, do socialist and communist governments own stakes in private, non-government companies?
The capitalist class in some systems exists at the discretion of the ruling party, creating a complex balance between state control and private sector involvement.
Maybe I should rename the channel to Exposer of Hypocrisy, or Irritated by Hypocrisy, or I've had it with hypocrisy. You guys can come up with the name of the new show. We'll switch it from Dollemore Daily to whatever you come up with. We're not doing that, but yeah, you get it. So in this edition of Trump and Republicans are just filthy hypocrites who just are in a cult who will follow and do whatever Donald Trump says. And they will bend and bow and scrape and twist themselves into pretzels, violating their own ethos, their own self-proclaimed closely held ideologies. Donald Trump back in August took a 10% stake in it's a public company, but it's a private company. It's not a government company, Intel. And he made a comment in the Oval Office yesterday to a Novo Nordisk, which is a pharmaceutical company, that he wants a stake in that company too. This is antithetical to the way Republicans have acted, well, forever. This is antithetical to conservatism, to free market capitalism, that the government would take a stake in a company as kind of a bribery note is in this case. And Donald Trump yesterday in the Oval Office made a comment to the CEO of Novo Nordisk that why don't you give us a stake of the company? Why don't you give America, I think he thinks it's him, a stake, and there's conditions on it though, which is really where the rub is, where the ethical quandary comes in. And then I'm going to play for you and read a tweet from Rand Paul calling this socialism, this type of action, and Eric Erickson, both stalwart conservatives who are calling it what it is. But the rest of the Republican Party, the same people who bemoaned the election of Zoran Mamdani, are acting like this is A-okay. They were like, oh, he's gonna have city-owned grocery stores. Oh, this is socialism and communism. Watch Donald Trump in the Oval Office be the communist he always rails against.
Novo Nordisk is in the middle of a potential $10 billion acquisition for a smaller obesity biotech. They might need your and the FTC's help to see that through. Do you have any issues with that, or Eli Lilly buying a smaller obesity biotech from an anti-competitive
Well, I don't know. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, I'd like to hear it. Maybe you should give us a piece of the company, like I've been asking for.
So
Give the United States a nice big chunk of the company.
So Novo Nordisk and Pfizer right now are in the middle of an acquisition dialogue and discussion.
It's you and Pfizer?
It's us and Pfizer.
Competing for the company?
Competing for the company.
Who's winning?
And as of today, our bid is higher. And our message to Pfizer is that if they would like to buy the company, then put your hand in the pocket and bid higher. It's a free market.
You see, what's baked into that statement by Donald Trump, that offhanded comment, we've already witnessed this take place with Intel. But what's baked in is, if we allow you to purchase this other company, this merger to take place between two corporations, if we allow it, if I allow it as president of the United States, you got to pay me. You got to pay up, and you got to give a part of your company to the United States government. Let's do an experiment here. Open up my billionaire-owned corporate wiretap that I have in my house. I'm asking the Amazon product, Alexa. Alexa, do socialist and communist governments own stakes in private, non-government companies?
Socialist and communist governments aim for common ownership of production means, but implementation varies widely across countries and time periods. In practice, some socialist countries like China have state-owned investment companies like Citigroup that participate in private markets, while others maintain stricter state control.
You don't say.
Many socialist systems allow private small businesses with restrictions, while others heavily restrict or eliminate private ownership. The capitalist class in some systems exists at the discretion of the ruling party, creating a complex balance between state control and private sector involvement. Government ownership in private companies can take various forms, from direct stakes to regulatory control, reflecting the diverse approaches to economic management in socialist and communist systems. These systems often evolve over time, with some moving toward more market-oriented approaches while maintaining socialist principles. The relationship between state and private ownership remains a key area of debate and experimentation in many countries.
Is that it? Okay. That was a lot. That was more than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, it is socialism in practice. It is communism in some ways in practice. The same thing that Donald Trump accuses Democrats of being. The same thing that back in when the auto industry went bonkers, when the markets crashed under George W. Bush, and then George W. Bush handed a recession to Barack Obama, and there was a bailout of the auto industry. A lot of these same people called that socialism, called that communism. Oh, this is too much. We can't do it. Where are those people now? There's only a few conservatives, Republicans, who speak out against things like this. People like Rand Paul, who tweeted this on August 20th, 2025. This is about the Intel purchase, the United States, Donald Trump taking a share of Intel. If socialism is government owning the means of production, wouldn't the government owning part of Intel be a step towards socialism? Terrible idea. Yeah. And it's not just him. You don't have to be an elected Republican. Here's Eric Erickson, a real turd, but at least he has the moral consistency within him to maintain the same view on this. There's many things he's a hypocrite about, but this apparently is one that he is not. This is around the same time period, talking about the Intel thing, and watch what Eric Erickson had to say about the Intel merger and the United States government owning the means of production.
I'm sorry, but no, this is a terrible, this is socialism. the U.S. government would become the largest shareholder of Intel. This is actual socialism happening by a Republican administration. There's no national security justification for this. In fact, I had some anonymous account on Twitter say, yeah, there's a national security justification for having control of Intel. Really? We don't have control of Raytheon. We don't have government control of NVIDIA. We don't have government control of Apple. We don't have government control of Boeing. We don't have government control of Lockheed Martin. We don't have government control of any major weapons developer or defense contractor. But you want 10% control of Intel in exchange for money the government already promised to give them. That's socialism. You may be comfortable with socialism. You may decide you like socialism because someone from the Trump administration wants socialism. But my God, people, what have we been fighting for the last decade? This is a horrible precedent. This is socialism. All of you people were freaked out about Mamdani in New York City wanting government-run grocery stores and saying the people need to seize the means of production. That's what Harold Lutnick is doing right now, saying that the government must seize the controlling interest in Intel, the means of production, in order to get government money. You can't just be against socialism when the left does it. If you're not against socialism overall, guess what? You're going to get socialism. So if you support socialism, apparently Donald Trump is your guy.
So if you support socialism, apparently Donald Trump is your guy. What do you have to say, MAGA? Is it only socialism when Democrats do it? Is it socialism when Donald Trump does it? Is it communism when Donald Trump does it? No, it's not, because he's the cult leader. And whatever the dear leader says, you go with. You say yes, yes, even though you are hypocrites. And if a Democrat did it, you would be crying and pearl clutching over it. As far as us owning stakes in companies that the government, that we the people help, I don't have a real problem with it. I do have a problem with the hypocrisy of Republicans who will throw up roadblocks and obstruction to progress when Democrats do. Like even them acting like, well, the Democrats are going to do this. We got to end the filibuster because as soon as they come back, they're going to end it. The Democratic Party isn't in the best state right now. Our leaders in our party, my party, I'm a member, are weak. You've got Chuck Schumer, who wouldn't endorse Zoran Mamdani. And then when asked, hey, you voted, who'd you vote for? I'm not going to tell you. That's not leadership. That's weakness. Hakeem Jeffries at the 11th hour endorsed Zoran Mamdani. These are corporate, middle of the road, milquetoast weakness. That's not leadership. The Republicans painting this Democratic Party that we currently exist in as some kind of a radical organization that's going to end the filibuster. We've had Democrats in power many times over many years in Congresses, and that didn't happen. They want to do it now because they need something done, and they're just going to change the rules midstream because they're hypocrites. The same people that are going to effectuate an end to the filibuster, to make sure that the government doesn't do for the most desperate among us. These are the same people who said that ending the filibuster was bad. Oh, we can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do it. Because they're liars. They're hypocrites. They're projection artists who serve at the whims of Donald Trump. What do you think? Let's have a conversation in the comments below. But he's so stupid, he thinks that the United States Treasury is just a big open pot of mixed monies that is his, that he can take from and he can put in, and it's just it's all for his use. That's not how it works. The government is currently shut down, the longest government shutdown in the history of this country. We have a system that is just absolutely broken where the government can close, and it's always the most vulnerable who suffer. It's the poorest, it's the sickest, it's children. That's who ends up suffering. We have a situation right now where soldiers, members of our military and their families are waiting in line at food banks because Donald Trump won't do what it takes to open the government back up. The Republican Party shut down the government They control the Congress, they control the White House, they control a vast majority or vast cross-section of our judiciary, the three branches of government, and they're blaming Democrats who don't have power, who are out of power, and can't even muster to be an opposition party. They have to just be the minority party, dragged along by their nose by the Republican Party. So the Republican Party passed a $1.6 billion tax cut for the top 5% of wage earners in this country. 1.6 trillion. And they did that, as this handy little chart points out, to counteract the $1.2 trillion, I think it's 1.3 trillion dollar cuts to SNAP, food assistance, food stamps, and Medicare, and the Affordable Care Act, which now we're seeing that your charges, your costs for healthcare, in some cases are doubling and tripling for some people because they are not going to renew the subsidies or that tax, that spending element. So it's a balance. That chart tells it all, that it's almost a 1-for-1. In order to pay for the tax cuts for the richest people, they had to cut something. And what did they cut? Programs for the most vulnerable. Programs for you, if you're on the Affordable Care Act, if you're on the exchange, Obamacare. So Donald Trump yesterday, the man who's seen to his third of $1 billion ballroom, I don't think it's a ballroom, I think it's something else, but we'll find out in time. That man, the billionaire who's never wanted for anything. Listen, let me say this before I play the clip, because he's going to say some batshit crazy things that are just not in tune with reality, that aren't how it works in the law. It really does lay bare that Donald Trump has no functioning understanding of what his job is, of how legislation works, about how appropriation works. He's a dumb fuck, an abject dumb fuck. Because he's never had to learn anything, because everything's been given to him. Since he was a child, he's been given everything. I tell you what, we'll just play the clip and we'll come back.
And one other thing, our country has to remain very liquid because problems, catastrophes, wars, could be anything. We have to remain liquid. We can't give everything away based on a number. Here's an example. When I was president, the number that you're talking about was a tiny fraction of what it is now. Biden went totally crazy, gave it to anybody that would ask, gave it to people that were able-bodied, had no problem. Anybody that would ask, we get the number. And it's many times the number of people are on. This wasn't meant for that. It was meant for people that had real problems, in many cases, people that were down and out, people that could be saved. It wasn't meant for people that could do whatever they want, the people that say, well, I don't think I'll work, I'll just, collect this money. Take a look at the number of what it was during my administration and what it was during the Biden administration. It went up many, many times my first term.
I'm going to get to the analysis of what he said and how it's stupid and wrong. Again, dumb. But let me say this about food stamps. This isn't some thought experiment for me. This isn't like there's poor people out there and it must be really bad to be hungry. It must really be bad to have to be on food stamps and food assistance by the government. This isn't theoretical for me. I grew up on food stamps, getting free lunch, not reduced lunch, free lunch at school. So much so that it developed in me insecurities and a complex about being poor and about people knowing that I'm poor and just embarrassment about it. When I'm a kid and in the school that I went to, when they punch your lunch ticket, your lunch little pink lunch card that we had, they would punch it and then write into the big check mark in the free lunch column, the person who was punching the card. So everybody knew free lunch. This is a poor kid. When people talk about eating government cheese and what we called commodities, that's not theoretical. I have eaten the government cheese, literally had sandwiches, a little kid with no dexterity cutting a massive, massive slice of cheese and then putting mustard and lettuce on it. And that was it. This isn't theoretical for me. People need assistance. people are poor by no fault of their own. They're not poor because they wasted their money. They're not poor because they don't spend their money well. They're poor because they don't have enough money. When are we going to get through our heads that that is what it is? My mom wasn't irresponsible. We were just poor. So when Donald Trump is acting like our country has to remain very liquid because problems, catastrophes, wars could be anything, we have to remain liquid. Does he think that money that was specifically in a targeted appropriation set aside for SNAP, that if a war breaks out, he can just take that money from the welfare fund or the Medicaid funding and then put it to war? That's not how it works. That would be a violation of the law. But he's so stupid, he thinks that the United States Treasury is just a big open pot of mixed monies that is his, that he can take from and he can put in, and it's just it's all for his use. That's not how it works. It's never been that way. And the President of the United States should know better to know better. But instead, we have a fucking moron as the President of the United States, I'm sorry to say. And that's not just a colloquialism or a turn of phrase. I am sorry to say that our president is a fucking idiot, harming the most desperate and sick, impoverished, oppressed in our society, while giving his buddies, the wildly wealthy billionaires, corporate welfare that nobody bitches about. Nobody asks Elon Musk, hey, is that lobster in your shopping cart? Are you eating steak in there? Are there oatmeal pies in there? Nobody's asking that, but they ask it about food stamp recipients, while Donald Trump waxes about liquidity in our government. It wasn't meant for people, food assistance, food stamps, wasn't meant for people. They could do whatever they want, that people that say, well, I don't think I'll work. I'll just, collect this money. Does he think people want to be poor? People, they choose to be poor. It's much easier and better to be poor than it is to have money and be able to pay your bills with ease, according to billionaire Donald Trump. This is disgusting and reprehensible and just heartless. It is an inadequate response to the desperation of millions of Americans that he is currently harming by continuing this government shutdown. Then a federal judge has said, no, you got to fund it. It's not a permissible, I think is what the word he used. It is mandatory. This is reporting from Notice. Obviously, this is a quote. This is from the Trump administration. Obviously, we have to find a way to comply, was what a senior Trump administration official first told Jasmine with a sigh, an hour after federal judge John McConnell Jr. ordered the government to issue full SNAP payments within 24 hours. By Thursday evening, the USDA, the department that administers SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or food stamps, the department that administers SNAP made clear that it would appeal. J.D. Vance said that it was an absurd ruling. And then this is the situation we're in right now, is that Donald Trump, as a measure of propaganda and hypocrisy and lying, has been saying, oh, we feel really bad. We're going to do everything we can to get these SNAP benefits to these people. And then when a judge orders, do it. Yeah, do it. I'm ordering you to do it. They're like, no, we're going to appeal. You don't get it both ways. This is how Notice talked about it. The White House has spent this shutdown saying it has been doing everything possible to mitigate harm from the shutdown. See WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children, another food assistance program. WIC and military pay, and simultaneously, after they've said they want to do everything possible, and simultaneously threatening to maximize pain. See Donald Trump's Truth Social post declaring no SNAP benefits until Democrats voted to open the government. The White House later clarified that the president's statement didn't include the initial court-ordered payments. And then here we have the judge's ruling. Judge McConnell accused the administration of not working quickly enough to disperse the funds. Quote, the order to use contingency funds was not permissive. It was mandatory, he said, adding that the administration had, quote, arbitrarily and capriciously created this problem by ignoring the congressional mandate for contingency funds and failing to notify the states. They have the money to pay for SNAP for another month, and they're not using it. Twisting the knife on poor people, on poor, hungry kids, while claiming, oh, we want to do everything we can. This is a Democrat shutdown. I'd love to hear from you if this too is not theoretical in your mind. Have you been on food assistance in your life as a child? As an adult? Are you on it now? We need to stand in the gap for people who are desperate and hungry and poor and want to focus on maintaining survival standards for themselves. And sometimes when you are focused on survival, you don't have the energy or the bandwidth to focus on policy, to focus on campaigns, to focus on getting out there and voting. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And we need to step in, raise our voices, get active, organized, to fight for those people when they can't fight for themselves. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. I love and appreciate you very much. Please consider supporting this work. For $2 a month, you become a channel member, or you can go to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast to help support independent media and the work we do right here.
And I will tell you right now, as God is my witness, if we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included.
This is a doozy of a clip. The clip I'm getting ready to show you is Steve Bannon on a stage, behind a podium, with a microphone in his face, recording what he's saying, and a camera recording what he's saying, admitting that he's committing crimes for Donald Trump. Admitting. He's already admitted many times that there is a plot to get Donald Trump into office a third time. In clear, sheer, wanton violation of the United States Constitution and the 22nd Amendment, which forbids someone for 3 terms in the White House. There's all kinds of things that he's been pardoned by Donald Trump or sentence commuted. Like, he has committed crimes. He has been brought to trial. There have been cases against him for defrauding donors of the build the wall thing. All kinds of stuff has gone on with Steve Bannon. So it's not surprising to me that he is here admitting that if Democrats come back into power, he's going to prison. The question it just comes to mind, it's just a natural, the water flowing downhill is just the natural thing that you would ask is, why would you go to prison? What crimes have you committed that you will be investigated and prosecuted and, if found guilty, sentenced for? What are the crimes? I think we all should be asking that question, because it's not just Steve Bannon who would be in this situation. Also, the other thing, maybe I'll talk about this at the end. I'll talk about that at the end. Watch this clip from Steve Bannon admitting to crimes in the service of Donald Trump.
And I will tell you right now, as God is my witness, if we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included. They're not going to stop. They're getting more and more and more radical. And we have to counter that. And what do we have to counter it with? We have to counter it with more action, more intense action, more urgency. We're burning daylight. If you look across every aspect of this, we have to codify what President Trump has done by executive order, right? We have to codify it. And people say, well, they're just going to be messing bills and pass Senate. We got to put aside these structural barriers and get on with it. President Trump today gave to the Senate when they came over for breakfast. Even Lindsey Graham, some of the guys that liked, and some of these institutions, I understand. This is a very tough decision to make. And you're going to see some people in the conservative movement that not in a million years, because I talked to him today, quite frankly, I had Hawley on the show this morning, Josh Hawley, and he's talking about it. And I'm trying to play the institutional. Well, they called me up this afternoon and said, let's go through the 10 reasons we need to do it. And these are heavy hitters on what I would call the constitutional, limited government constitutionalist in our movement. And they're about to come out over the next couple of days and make this argument because it said, look, we have to understand that if we don't take this to the maximum, a maximalist strategy now with a sense of urgency, and in doing this, seize the institutions, if we don't do that now, we're going to lose this chance forever because you're never going to have another Trump, right? You're just not going to have it.
Look, when the atmosphere and the current reality of Democrats appointing people like Merrick Garland to be the Attorney General of the United States, if this is what we have to look forward to, nobody's getting prosecuted. He's not going to jail. They couldn't even get Donald Trump in jail. And there were clear crimes, enormous crimes that Donald Trump committed. Violations of national security, absconding with national security secrets, attempting to overthrow the United States government by way of overturning a free and fair election. He tried to overthrow the government and he didn't get prosecuted because Merrick Garland, a Democrat, wanted to appear. We want to appear unbiased. Merrick Garland put Republicans in charge of the prosecution of Hunter Biden. Tell me again how Steve Bannon's so afraid of going to prison, and ostensibly what he's suggesting is it will be improper. It will be weaponization. Now I will tell you right now, as God is my witness, if we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included. Why would that be, Steve Bannon? Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. The translation is they're guilty. They know they're guilty. That's what you can read into this. That he is broadcasting that he's committing crimes for Donald Trump. The scary thing is we don't know exactly what those crimes are yet, because he does work in secret and in tandem with other groups like the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Roberts' little outfit, that brought to us Project 2025 that 50% of is already almost put into place. They're firing thousands of federal workers. They are doing enormous, irreparable damage to this country. Maybe not irreparable literally, but it's going to take a generation to undo what was done in Donald Trump's just first 9 months. Because they are emboldened. And the reason they're emboldened, I was going to end, but here we are. The reason they're emboldened is because of feckless prosecutors and attorneys general like Merrick Garland. We need to handle these criminals like Brazil did with Bolsonaro, like South Korea did with their leader who attempted an insurrection against the government. We need to handle our lawbreakers who have power like any other criminal. Investigate, bring them to trial, and prosecute them. And if a jury of their peers sees fit, you send them to prison. That's what you do in a system that is based on the rule of law. And unfortunately for them, fortunately maybe because Democrats are so weak in this area so often, the Constitution lays it out. This is the rule of law. This is not just a roadmap. These are mandatory things that we must do as a civil society that is based on laws. You would think that Republicans, the same Republicans that pull this document out of their pocket that's all tattered, I read this all the time, just like the family Bible. That's why it's so ready to fall apart, because it's so well used. The same Republicans that are those Republicans don't have anything to say about attempting to overthrow the United States government, usurping the will of the people, disenfranchising you, or attempting to do so. While Donald Trump pardons nearly 2,000 violent insurrectionists. I hope you do go to prison, Steve Bannon. And if I can have anything to do with that, somebody call me. I will step into my role. This non-attorney will help. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. It has been a great week back since our trip to Japan. Thank you very much for joining me and engaging with my content. As a favor to me and to yourself, make sure you're subscribed to Garrison Hayes' show on YouTube. We'll put a link below. Make sure you're subscribed to Boston Bryan's show, Blunt Politics. Both people do fantastic work in independent media. Both people were gracious enough and willing enough to step in and guest host this program. So I didn't leave you in the lurch for an entire week and more while I was gone. And I think you'll be better off for subscribing to them and consuming their content as well. I don't look at this job as competition. More voices are better. We're trying to change the heart and soul of America, and we need as many people on board with that message as we can. And those are two great ones. Anyway, I love and appreciate you very much. Again, have a great weekend. I'll see you next time. Be genuine and take care of one another.